Hello everyone and welcome back to another Star Wars action figure review. Continuing to take a look at some vintage collection figures today, we are taking a look in this review at the Range Trooper from Solo: A Star Wars Story. This actually marks my first review on a figure from Solo. I was a little bit out of the loop with YouTube when the movie was released and when the merch started to hit. I was on a little bit of a break, so I didn't get around to reviewing any of the figures that were released for this movie. But as the old saying goes, better late than never, and we're going to take a look at a really cool one today. Once again, the Range Trooper. This is, without a doubt, the coolest design of a trooper to come out of Solo. There were some fantastic troopers, like with Rogue One, introduced in that movie, but this one is definitely the highlight, at least for me personally. It's just such a unique, wonderful and weird design, and I'm a really big fan of this guy, and I can't wait to share this figure with you in more detail. Now before we do that, as always, we are going to take a look at the packaging that he comes in, and once again we do get standard vintage collection packaging for this figure. It's got a really nice image of the Range Trooper on the card back. Again, love the design of these troopers. They look really intimidating, really cool. You've obviously got the Solo logo at the top of the card, Kenner down in the bottom corner, and on the reverse side some other figures available in the vintage collection. Some of these will be getting reviewed in the future, such as Han Solo and Enfys Nest. We've had a look at Dr. Aphra already, so be sure to check out that review if you haven't done so already. And then of course we are looking at the Range Trooper today, and there are a couple of other figures available in this line. So standard stuff in terms of packaging. Always love that vintage card. So without further ado, let's take a look at the figure we get inside, and here he is. Very cool indeed. Like with the Imperial hover tank driver that I gave you a look at in my last review, this figure does share some similarities to its 5POA counterpart, as this figure was also released in the Force Link 2.0 range, obviously with limited articulation and a less premium deco. So in terms of which figure is superior, this one, all day long. The vintage collection always takes the cake in my opinion, and this figure just gets it right. There are a couple of things with this figure that Hasbro didn't do with other iterations of this character, and I don't understand why, and I'll touch base on that in just a little bit. But for the sake of a quick comparison, I'll give you a look at the 5POA version. Both fantastic figures in their own right. Each one has its pros, each one has its cons. But again, if articulation, premium paint applications and all that sort of stuff are your thing, the vintage collection release is the figure that you're going to want to pick up. The 5POA version does have its benefits. For example, if you come down towards the lower body, there's a lot more weathering and a lot better paint applications going on in terms of the boots, instead of the plain aesthetic that we get with the vintage release. So it's got that going for it. Obviously the articulation is limited on this guy. Posability is hindered somewhat. But they're both very good figures. But again, the vintage collection is better. So with that in mind, let's talk about articulation first, and then we'll run through the accessories he comes with. He does have a ball joint at the head, slightly hindered by the fur coat that isn't a fur coat, it's a plastic coat in this instance. But you know, you can still get a decent range of movement out of it, but it does get in the way a little bit, and for certain poses just makes it look a little bit awkward. But it's nothing too major. We do also have hinges at the elbows, which again are hindered slightly, or shoulders should I say, not elbows, which are hindered slightly by this trim on the top of the jacket. But again, for the poses that you're going to want to get this guy in, he does the job. So can't really complain too much. We do have hinges at the elbows and hinges at the wrists. There's a ball joint, although it's more of a swivel on this figure at the waist. Hinges at the hips, although again you've got this plastic jacket which restricts a lot of that movement, which is unfortunate. There are swivels at the upper thigh, hinges in the knees and hinges at the ankles. So great articulation, it's just there's a lot of plastic going on with this guy that gets in the way, which is a little bit of a shame, but for me doesn't take anything away from the figure. I can get this guy in all the poses I want him to which is essentially just holding his gun, and that's fine. So yeah, really, really nice articulation. Obviously, some of the design elements on this figure are familiar. The chest plate is very similar to that of the Snow Troopers. The helmet has sort of a range trooper, not a range trooper, a scout trooper look to it, with the single grille at the front there and the narrow visor. What I really liked about the trooper designs in Solo is that they were definitely a hybrid of Imperial and Republic era troopers, which was really nice to see that, you know, that gap being bridged between the two eras, as obviously Solo was set just before the original trilogy, but just after Revenge of the Sith. So it was really nice to see that transition from clone troopers to stormtroopers. It's one of the things I really like about these guys. As I mentioned, there's a lot of plastic going on with this figure. So you've got this jacket, which is all sculpted in plastic. Nicely weathered though. Absolutely love this dirty brush texture that's going on there. That looks really, really nice. And you've got these really big, bulky, magnetic boots, which aren't actually magnetic for the sake of function with this figure, but in the movie they obviously are used to climb aboard the runaway train. In terms of accessories, the range trooper does just come with the one, and that's this blaster rifle that we get here. This is actually the only figure that Hasbro have put out of the range trooper, and obviously there's been a few. We've had this guy, the 5POA version. There's been a Black Series 6-inch release as well. But this is the only figure that gets the blaster rifle correct. In the movie, these blasters, as you can see on the image on the card, just pull that to one side, is white. It's not the standard black or grey blaster that we usually see with Imperial troops. It's a white blaster. And as I mentioned, this is the only figure that gets that colour accurate. The other figures in the line have all sculpted or painted this blaster in a dark colour, but this is the only one that actually paints it as it is seen in the movie, which is a massive plus for me, because I love the design of this blaster. I think it's great. As you can see, it is very similar to the E11 in the sense that you've got the basis of a Sterling submachine gun going on, with the long barrel, the grills at the front there, the magazine on the side, but there's no scope on the top. The scope has been moved down towards the edge of the barrel. The stock is extended. It's just a cool looking blaster, something a little bit different. It's, you know, it's familiar but different, and that's what I really like. And again, like with the Rogue One E11s, you've got that scope or flashlight on the side there as well. So really, really cool figure. Again, absolutely love the designs of the range troopers. They really made an impression on me. Prior to the movie's release and after as well, they look really, really cool when they're in pursuit of Beckett and Solo and all that sort of stuff. Really, really cool scene in the film on Vandor 1. And a great figure to add to the collection. Again, like with the tank driver I gave you a look at previously, if you're looking for a cheap army builder, the Force Link is the way to go. But if you want premium articulation, premium detail, and an accurate weapon, then the Vintage Collection release is the one that you're going to want to pick up. And again, can't recommend him enough. So that is going to do it for this review on the Vintage Collection Range Trooper. We'll be taking a look at some more characters from the Vintage Collection and from Solo, A Star Wars Story in a couple of my future reviews. So in the meantime, until then, as always, keep collecting and may the Force be with you.